Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Today we start a new book, the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, with Parshat Bamidbar, and with us to discuss it is Eliana Rubin. Hello and thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
In our Parsha, we hear the story about an elaborate census of the tribes of Israel conducted by Moses in the desert. The Parsha then continues to discuss the priest's ceremonial duties and how the portable desert sanctuary is dismantled and transported in the desert. The first pasuk of the Parsha says, וידבר אדוני אל משה במדבר סיני באוהל מועד באחד לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאתם מארץ מצרים לאמור. The Lord spoke to Moses in the Sinai desert in the tent of meeting on the first day of the second month in the second year after the exodus from the land of Egypt, saying. So this is the first pasuk is quite boring, and I think this parsha is a fine competitor to be the most boring parsha in the Torah. Would you say that's the case?
Well, on paper, sure. It's a lot of counting, very apt for the Book of Numbers. But I think that when we are able to look at why the counting exists, I think that then we are able to see a little bit more of the meaning that stands behind it. God instructs Moses to take a census of people within these 12 tribes, or 11 tribes, and then also the tribe of Levi,
Right.
choosing a census taker, and for these 11 tribes, trying to find men that are of draftable age between the ages of 20 and 60 years old, and counting 603, 550,000 is the number that we have. But I think that there's also something really important about not making an assumption of how many people there are, making sure that every single person in this census is accounted for. They've been walking in the desert for 2 years. A lot has happened in those 2 years that we may not know about. We know about some of it from the book of Leviticus, but one of the things that I love about the Torah is how there's so much between the text and between the lines and between
The
the
text
parshiot that we
doesn't
just
tell
don't
us
know.
much. There are very few emotions, very few things that we truly know about, a whole nation wandering in the desert.
Yeah, exactly. And so it makes me ponder why the rabbinic authors chose these specific parshiot to tell. While this portion is very number heavy, I think that it allows for us to be able to think about who are these people? Why are they being counted? Something that I like to do with Midrash is to think about what these people were feeling at the time. We have over 600,000 men that are eligible to go to war. Do all of them want to go to war? What about the people that are more pacifist in nature? If someone isn't necessarily able to go to war, but is still required to do so, or if someone who's really excited. These are not the stories that are told directly in these parshiot. But I think it gives us an opportunity to be able to make meaning with the text that we have. And in doing so, we're able to enrich these stories beyond what's on the page.
Okay, now you said something interesting. You said that we have to look for meaning in the text that we have. Do you think that when this text was written or delivered to us through the generations, it's because the text has meaning, or it's just the text, we got it, it's not the most exciting, so we have to search for meaning? Namely, do you see any intention behind all these technical details that we get?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of the technicalities of the portion, needing to count is important. Needing to know who is there is essential in order to have an army. And also, when thinking about the text being passed down from generation to generation, there are some people, I would imagine, along the way that find immense meaning and intention in the text that's on the page. I think that our society today is swept up in so many rich stories and storytelling, which is beautiful. And that doesn't discredit what is on the paper, what is in the text. My brain goes to TikTok and to YouTube and how we have so much stimulation that is all around us at all times, and so we need this stimulation. And so to us, this portion may not necessarily be the most exciting or enjoyable, but there was a reason it was written. The rabbinic authors would not have written this if they didn't feel it was important for us as the Jewish people to be able to learn about and to be able to study and to be able to eventually teach if that's something that we desire to do. And so I think that it has different meaning for every person. You asking me why this portion is here, and it might be considered one of the most boring parshiyot in our texts. That may be true for some of us, but for others, they might have an argument that says, "What are you talking about? This is a beautiful portion. We get to see the counting. We get to see the census that occurs. Why do the tribes exist in this part of the camp or in this part of the camp? Why do these different tribes get to be able to have the honor of being able to carry these parts of the tabernacle or to be able to set up the sacred vestment?" And I think that it's really imperative for us to recognize that just because that someone thinks one thing about it, that doesn't discredit that someone else thinks an entirely different thing. Both of those thought processes are valid.
Right. Would you go as far as saying that even these technical details, how many men between those ages were members of the tribe of Asher, that even in such small details we can sense, there is a component of holiness, of something that can elevate us from the nothingness to the holy.
From the nothingness to the holy. I love that. Yeah, I think so. When I think about organizational structures and the means that go behind them, like let's say that there's a synagogue, right? It's this building and these people come and they pray and it's something that's super sacred to them. Who goes into the making of the synagogue? Who designed the building itself? We need clergy, perhaps, in order to lead us in prayer. We need the custodial staff to help us set up and break down. We need the congregants and the prayer participants to be able to come. And all of that is holy. It's the entire entity of what exists inside of that synagogue. And so when we look at this portion, the counting itself can be considered sacred, because without it, we wouldn't know how many men are able to join the army. We wouldn't know the exact number in each of these tribes. And there is something about a task being considered mundane versus being exciting versus being sanctified. And how do we impart a meaning onto that? How do we assign value to that? I have to wake up early on some mornings for work. And so when I go to work, I have two options.
I feel for you.
Wake up. What?
I feel for you.
Yeah. And so when I wake up, I have two options that I see. The first is to wake up begrudgingly, go brush my teeth, take a shower. I'm exhausted. I don't want to go to work this morning. I have to go on this long drive. Alternatively, I wake up, I'm sleepy, that's okay. I make myself a cup of coffee. I take joy in the shower that is able to wake me up a little bit. And then on this drive, I get to listen to a new podcast, or I get to listen to one of my favorite albums. And when I assign the value this mundane task, it makes it more or less of something for me. And so when people are counting, when the census takers are taking the census, they're not doing it for nothing. For one thing, God is talking to them. And yes, there is a lot of, there are many stories in the book of Numbers where they don't really want to listen to God, and also just across the Torah. But then I'm sure that there are also some people that are super excited that they were chosen, And I don't think that it's super black or white. I think that in order to think about if organizational means are sanctified, one has to look at all aspects of the organization. You can't just look at power from the top down. You have to make sure that everyone feels heard.
Eliana, Rubin, that was an educational journey from setting up chairs at the synagogue to counting members of the Israelite tribe in the desert. Thank you so much and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.